Welcome, everybody, and thank you all for joining us today. I am Kaiser Guo. I am the host of the Cynical Podcast and editor at large at Sup China. I'm really honored and excited to be hosting today's event about Immortal Studios and the exciting Wuxia storyverse that they are creating. Immortal is doing something that I can personally really get behind. They're taking the beloved genre of Wuxia fiction, updating it, and really creating a whole world that people here in the US and all around the world are sure to completely resonate with and completely dig. Some of you may have heard the podcast that I did late last year with Peter Shiao, the man who is really behind Immortal and its vision, an old friend of mine. We will be speaking to Peter again at the end of the hour, but first, in just a minute here, we'll hear a taping of a live reading from the first comic book produced by Immortal called The Adept, which was a crowd-funded project that hit its target in just 3 hours and met 350% of its goal. A lot of excitement around it. You're going to hear from Li Huang, who is the head of product at Immortal, who will give you a quick overview of The Adept ahead of the reading. So I'll just see you in about 10 minutes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Li Huang, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today for a reading of The Adept, the first comic book produced by Immortal Studios. The Adept tells the deep and personal story of Amy, a young Chinese-American woman who begins a journey to become the adept to an ancient martial tradition, which has been lost to the ages. It is a story of heroism, action, mystery, self-discovery, and redemption. For this reading, which will take about 5 minutes, we have selected several pages from the comic to read to give you a taste of the characters, the story, and an introduction to the Immortal storyverse. We have a very talented cast who will be doing the reading. I'd like to introduce Shannon Chang, who will be playing Amy, the lead character and heroine. Sarah Wu will be playing Allie, Amy's younger sister, who has a troubled relationship with her older sibling. Kay Shields will play Sasha True, a pop singer who finds herself in the middle of a lot of danger. Robert Wu does double duty as Fa Shang, our Shaolin master, and also Kitsune, the villain. Tai Kiamboa plays Marcus, a villain who has a face-off with Amy. Perry Shields plays our henchman. Jia Yingding has several supporting roles. And Craig Shields will be our narrator. Also, very special thanks to Lisa Zarate, who directed this reading. We had a great time putting together this reading, and we really hope you enjoy the performance. So on with the show.
Please welcome to the stage the one and only Sasha True.
Boy, 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 you make me wanna. Boy, 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 you say you wanna.
Allie returns to her seat with Amy.
I owe her this and so much more.
Boy, 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 you make me wanna. Boy, 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 you say you wanna.
Sometimes I feel I'll never be able to repay what I've taken from her. How do you give someone back their childhood? Allie, can I tell you something?
What?
About why I came back.
What? I can't hear you.
Somebody's trying to kill Sasha.
Amy and Allie crane their necks to try to get a look at the stage through the crowd of panicking people. Seemingly out of thin air, a bald monk in modern attire leaps up onto the stage, sending bodyguards flying as he makes his way towards Sasha. This man is Fa Shang. Amy, mouth agape, stares up in shock at the stage as Fa Shang grabs Sasha True. Amy is paralyzed. Her life is crashing in around her at the sight of this familiar monk dashing on stage.
That's him, the man from my dreams.
Amy is immediately taken back to her teenage years. Night after night, she would fall into vivid dreams where she endured endless hours of training with Fa Shang.
Mind leads energy, not strength or power. The mind is your strongest tool. Again.
Teen Amy wears her early Shaolin-inspired training robe. She stands in horse riding stance on a narrow fallen log, stretched out over a crevasse so deep you can barely see the earthen floor beneath the fog.
What is the sensation you feel?
Fear.
No. What does fear feel like?
Shaking, heart racing, fire. It's like fire in my chest.
Teen Amy's body trembles. The way down looks so fatally far.
What is the thought that arises?
Death, painful death.
But you are not dead now. What is happening now?
This is stupid. I want off.
Death is in the future. This moment you are standing on a log. What can you fix right now?
I can lower my heart rate.
Good.
I can calm the shaking.
Yes.
Teen Amy's quivering has stopped. Her body looks instantly more stable as she now holds horse riding stance with confidence.
What is fear, Amy?
It is just a thought.
Back at the concert, Amy stands frozen for a moment, watching Fa Sheng now tugging Sasha off the stage.
For years, he appeared every night when I slept. Then 8 months ago, the dream stopped. He was gone. No explanation.
Amy instinctively heads toward the stage, to that familiar man.
Where the hell are you going?
To get answers.
Guns!
Down!
On the ground. Step back.
Get Sasha!
Those aren't security guards.
What? How the hell do you know?
When you live on the streets, you learn to pay attention. It can mean the difference between living another day and dying a Jane Doe. Look at them. They've seen a fight, probably hired guns, and mostly because they just don't seem interested in helping us.
As one of the henchmen rashly levels his gun at Fa Sheng, another pushes his arms down.
Don't! You might hit her!
They charge Fa Sheng. Fa Sheng deftly deflects henchmen 1 and 3. It's all about transferring energy. The henchmen come like bulls, and Fa Sheng simply uses their violent energy to flow their downfalls.
What? I can't move my foot.
Henchman 3 kicks Fa Sheng right in the gut. Fa Sheng's feet skid a few inches, but that's all. Henchman 3 is shocked. Fa Sheng delivers the same exact kick to Henchman 3, but the henchman flies back, knocking over his friends. Amy is still sneaking toward the stage. All around her, people are cowering under their seats. Suddenly, she sees smoke billow up and around the frame.
What the hell?
Amy, fear fading, and determination now takes its place.
Thoughts can be controlled.
Exhaling calmly, Amy runs into the fight. Amy grabs the arm of a henchman as she leaps up onto an equipment crate to break his arm.
Like before, every form he taught me flows into my body, the muscle memory of years of dreams.
Amy lands in that familiar horse riding stance and delivers a tiger claw to the henchman's temple, knocking him out, probably doing permanent brain damage.
And then waking up and practicing, alone, on the streets, or some junkie's hotel room, never understanding why, but not being able to stop either, like some kind of addict, a freak.
Amy, now crouched low, transfers her move into a kick to the groin of another henchman.
He destroyed my life, what little there was left to destroy. Now all these creeps are just in the way, between me and my answers. Who the hell are you, and why did you pick me?
Amy finally stands before her Fa Sheng. Their positions are offset, profile to profile, like two sides of a coin. Amy, breathless, eager.
Finally, after all these years, I know I'm not crazy. He's real. Teacher.
Get Sasha to safety.
The mysterious boss Kitsune hands Marcus an apple from a bowl of fresh fruits.
You look tired, old friend. Here, renew your energy. The singer is the first turn of the wheel, Marcus. Without her.
As an apprentice.
What did you say?
A young woman. He was protecting her.
How interesting.
Marcus drops the smashed bullet that failed to pierce Fa Sheng's flesh into the hands of his boss and explains in English what happened.
Also, he stopped 2 of them before the 3rd got him.
Hard Qigong.
But I've never seen Qigong do that. It's a myth.
A myth I am holding in my hand.
Amy turns to see Marcus. Despite being a bit drained from his encounter with his boss, he's not in the least concerned about Amy.
It's always brought me luck, and now it's brought me to you.
Maybe your luck's run out.
You're the apprentice, aren't you? I saw you fight.
I didn't see you do crap.
Because you deserted your master when he most need. Is that the way of the Shaolin?
Amy's face, anger and shame rising.
It's over. The police are coming. You guys lost. Just walk away.
With a fierce glare, Marcus drops into Dachi's stance, the ready stance in karate.
Unlike you, I do not abandon my master. Now I will bring him, Sasha, and your head.
Resigned, Amy settles into horse riding stance. Sasha yells encouragingly from behind, seemingly unaware of the life and death stakes.
You got this, badass.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I am really psyched to see what happens next. Let's bring up some of the team behind Immortal and learn a little bit more about the storyverse that they are creating together. Let's have Peter, Lee, Emma, Jean, and Gabe join us on Zoom here. Super quick round of introductions to all of you. Peter Shiao, of course, is the founder and CEO of Immortal Studios and the son of a true immortal of the Wuxia literary genre, the writer Xiao Yi. Li Huang, who you met earlier at the beginning of the video, is head of product at Immortal Studios. Emma Jibulu is the director of content at Immortal Studios. Jean Cheng is the action director and associate editor at Immortal, is also a 32nd generation disciple of the original Shaolin Temple in China and author of Shaolin Trips. And Gabe Sapienza is the lead artist for Chronicles of the Immortal Swordsman, Immortal's second comic book, which is coming out soon. Peter, let me start with you with a couple of questions for you. You must get all the time, but are really just so fundamental, I think, to this entire endeavor. What is the wuxia genre, and what are some examples of it, maybe that might be familiar to American audiences?
Well, wuxia, which literally means the martial hero universe, martial heroes. Wuxia, I think, is the native genre of China that has been around for thousands of years as the tool of inspiration, of justice, of hope giving to the masses that, frankly, through some very, very dark times have needed it. And it continues to exist because it really taps into this, I think, this universal need for empowerment, for justice, and also a belief that we are infinite beings capable of extraordinary things. And that's the genre that packs all of those human emotions with a unique Chinese flair to the masses. That's why it's been around for thousands of years.
Right. And what about things that might be familiar to American audiences, examples of it, so that they get a better idea of what you're talking about?
First of all, wuxia comes in so many different sizes, but I would say classic wuxia is best epitomized by something everybody knows and loves. It's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Sure.
You know, that is the perfect encapsulation of classic wuxia. There's the hero, there's the sword, there's the Zhenghu, there's the learning, there's the master, there's this kind of revenge plot, and then there's the transcendent moments. So really putting it all together. So a lot of people don't know wuxia, they haven't heard the word, but when they realize that it's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, it's Once Upon a Time in China, it's The Matrix, people's light bulbs go off. It's like, oh, I actually love wuxia. I just didn't know the name.
Right. It's also Star Wars. It's a lot of other, I think there's
Star Wars, it's Kill Bill, it's many, many things.
Sure. I want to turn to Emma. It's really the creative process in all this that fascinates me the most. What are some of the big challenges that you see here in taking these stories that come out of a very different time, a very different place, a very different cultural milieu, and transposing them and making them maybe more global, more universal and accessible? What kind of challenges do you see?
A lot of the novels and some of the films that people are familiar with are incredibly dense, and some of the iconography can feel very obscure to some of the uninitiated. But I think, we'll probably be integrating some of those nods to the genre because that's actually what's going to keep it fresh. Some people haven't seen this before. But I'd say for the ideas, if you really strip them back, they relate quite closely just to more of a universal human experience. And they have something to offer to everyone. It's really just takes a shift in mindset Amy's story that you just saw is really a testament to that. She's traveling across time and space, trained by Fa Sheng, but I think her story is still quite grounded and accessible. And as for our creative process, I think what's unique about our team is we're coming from all different corners of the globe, and our own identities are somewhat of an amalgamation of different cultures and experiences. So I think when something doesn't feel authentic, or a moment that seems a bit too abstract, maybe for a wider audience, we tend to check each other's blind spots.
Oh, all right. That's great. Peter, your approach to this, and your efforts to keep it really true to its origins in Chinese culture, is really to build in a lot of the philosophical traditions on which Wuxia is really founded, even as you shift the settings to the modern day, out of Asia to the West. What are some of those key philosophical traditions and the ideas that really animate the whole genre of Wuxia?
First of all, I don't think you can understand Wuxia without the native philosophy of China, which is Taoism. I don't even like the word Taoism as religion, but as philosophy. So the Tao flows heavily involved in the genre, whether it's as the basis, as the metaphysical basis of extraordinary human capabilities, to how they hold themselves as part of this larger interconnected universe, and notions of transformation and transcendence. And it's also very closely mirrored and aligned with notions of Buddhism, of enlightenment. So I would say the two big overarching influences are Taoist and Buddhist. And as it exists in the human world, I think notions of order and morality, virtues also come into play. So Confucianism grounds it in a way. So it's an amalgamation of those three timeless influences playing themselves out. But they're not really competing factors. They're actually deeply integrated. So we've created space for that kind of thinking, because the Wuxia universe is actually not just a world of fighting and physical combat. It's always been something bigger. So we've done something very, very ambitious, which is to bring together all the various influences of Wuxia from a more grounded fighting thing. We just saw, like, to include Shaolin and Huo Yuanjia and Wang Feihong, these real life legendary heroes in the world they occupied, to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, to the world of the Immortal Swordsman, to the world of the Arhats. So the philosophical influences, the moral influences, they're all baked in. This has never happened before. So we put it all into one interconnected world. So this is for Wuxia fans. This is something different, I believe.
But it's also got to be something really challenging for you, Emma, as creative, bringing that element of it, the spiritual stuff. I mean, with American comics, with Marvel or DC or whatever, they draw on a lot of the mythological pantheons, whether they're Greco-Roman or Judeo-Christian or Norse or whatever, that are going to be really familiar to American audiences. They've studied this stuff in school, they've read about it in church. But here we're talking about something that is distinctly Chinese in its cosmology and not familiar. That's got to be a challenge too, to depict that. Yeah, make that.
In some ways, yeah. I would say that maybe the cultural landscape isn't as carved up as people may first think. I think people are already welcoming in Eastern mindsets, even though they're not always named as such. They're not called Buddhism. It could be the rise of meditation apps or mindfulness, a testament to just how powerful these ideas can be. But if you even look at how Wuxia's impacted, say, like the Black audiences years ago, a lot of these influences are embedded in popular culture. The solidarity of struggle, rising up from the margins. Like Bruce Lee was an icon across the States, but also in Africa. And those cinema double features of old martial arts and kung fu movies, I feel like, they were reflecting like the physical or lyrical janku of a lot of hip hop culture. And so that permeates tracks like Wu-Tang Clan. And there's a lot of homages to that genre, which, come all the way through to, say, like Lupe Fiasco or Kill Bill. So yeah, and I mean, Peter just mentioned like The Matrix, but particularly for this audience, millennials or Gen Z, I think that they've grown up, not with traditional borders, they've grown up with the internet at their fingertips. They've been watching anime, manga, webtoon, and a lot of that already embodies that Eastern spirit, particularly shonen category. But yeah, I mean, even in games, if you think about like the idea of cultivation, it feels so abstract, but it's integral to your progression in levels in games.
That's a really great observation. I want to turn to Gabe. You're working on the soon-to-be-released title, Chronicles of the Immortal Swordsman. I'm really curious about how you as an artist are approaching something like this. It's, again, really quintessentially Chinese. Have you really immersed yourself in all like the Chinese comic book styles and traditions, or are you taking a completely different approach or something syncretic and synthesized? Or?
Well, honestly, with this project, I've stepped into fairly new territory. Most of my influences have come from like American, European, and Japanese film and TV. Like ironically, I don't really read a ton of comics, which is funny because I love making them. And I had been exposed to some wuxia films, but not really a ton. And with Emma's help, though, I now have an extensive backlog of media to dive into between drawing pages, and it's just awesome stuff. I have that and also a ton of parkour videos I've been watching. But what's really cool about the process is that most of what ends up on the page is actually like the result of a confluence of ideas from the team and myself. So from script to page, the way I've been tackling it is by working closely with Peter. I'll typically digest a portion of the script and seek out a flow for the pages and panel sequences. And this is where I'm trying to come up with a visual narrative that will really propel like a mood or theme. And then in our meetings, we talk about what we can refine, what's working, what's not working, and what we want to infuse into the visual language. So we usually volley ideas and inspiration until we land on what feels right for the story. Everything starts like super loose. And then it works its way to polish when we know the pages have strong bones. But all of that said, like what I find extremely helpful and humbling is being able to turn to this team to ensure that the work feels authentic to its roots and foundation, because I really want to help give it the voice it needs.
Again, I'm staying with you here for a sec, Gabe. Part of the challenge here has to be in trying to capture stuff that's so intangible, in depicting stuff that's deeply, spiritual or numinous or intimate, metaphysical. Is that hard for you as an artist? I mean, it's not just getting the action shots and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it can be tricky because you kind of have to enter. I have to access that space in myself too, and kind of reflect on what that feels like and how that comes out on the page. Sometimes it's about what you leave out and what you include. It can be as simple as how a character is framed, like the subtlety of a pose or their gesture or expression. Like you can find poetry in that. Other times it can be as literal as depicting like waves or ripples of light or energy. I do want to pull up an image. I'm not sure if it's up yet.
I want to interject as he's sharing his image that we chose Gabe specifically for his ability to deliver tone. And after we talked to him, we found that even though we came from different backgrounds, this was not native to him, but he had a curiosity and an openness and a finesse. And look, you could talk about the scene. I think it really speaks to what we're talking about.
So again, this is like in its loose stages, but in this double page spread we're looking at here, I was thinking about where our hero's mind was at. So he's in a place where he's unpacking some really, really heavy thoughts and feelings. And I wanted to have this visual element of him in the flow of his parkour, leaping from rooftop to rooftop, like those thoughts are leaping in his mind. And so in the sequences, I'm trying to find moments of detachment in some of the wider shots, and then suddenly these really grounded ones, sort of how like you come in and out of clarity when your mind is clouded.
Right.
And in the last panel here, I wanted the visuals to reflect the sinking or falling nature of his thoughts as his figure sort of like swallowed up by the depths of his drop. And so I guess for the most part, I'm trying to weave a feeling or theme into the frames so that they have like this intrinsic feeling to the reader. And so they may walk away from the pages having felt what the visuals are trying to convey, but not necessarily knowing why. And that's sort of the magic I'm trying to conjure up with the rest of the team.
Well, I cannot wait to see that. Gene, I want to turn to you. I am guessing that most comic authors back in the golden age and the silver age of comics in the United States here probably didn't have action directors to work with them. But it's really cool. I think it's what's really unique is that they brought in somebody like you to imbue the action sequences, which are so integral to the stories, with real authenticity, with real verisimilitude. I'm guessing that most martial arts media don't really depict the styles that they represent with as much accuracy as we're getting here. How did you react to being asked when Peter and company approached you to do a comic book series? And then maybe Peter can quickly answer, why did the team feel like that was so important? Gene?
Well, my background is for 20 years, I published Kung Fu Tai Chi, which was a major newsstand magazine dedicated to Chinese martial arts. And I've been approached by comic artists over the years forever. People will always reach out to me, but I actually knew Peter because Peter did a lot of work with the genuine Shaolin Temple. And we had met over a decade ago doing promotions of Shaolin events, international Shaolin events. And so when he approached me, it was a little deeper than a lot of these other comic that have talked to me about doing things, and his whole take about trying to keep it all very authentic was very critical into what I kind of wanted to do, because part of my mission has always been to try and bring Chinese martial arts over authentically. And you look at like the movies, like the old Shaw Brothers and the old Golden Harvest films, and they weren't. There's great kung fu, but they weren't always connected in terms of the styles. And that still is a situation. So, for example, Wang Feihong, who's one of the most famous cinematic figures, there's over 100 films on Wang Feihong. Very few of them actually have him doing Hong Ga, which it's a major style. Jackie played him, Jet played him, but they didn't really do Hong Ga, which is ironic. Most of the Shaw Brothers guys were actually Hong Ga guys. So we really try to bring that authenticity in. There's an immense culture to Chinese martial arts,
right?
Very rich and very deep, and we try to integrate that and represent it appropriately.
There's cultures that are specific to styles, right? There's elements of culture that are really expressed through particular martial arts styles, and that's something that you're doing with. I've heard you talk about how that's important to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every style it really is an art. Not only do you have just how they fight, but then there's shamanic religious elements in it. There's caricature elements in terms of what kind of fists they use, what kind of hands and postures, and this is all, for most people, it just kind of goes past them, and obviously for anything fictional, there's a little bit of wiggle room in terms of making it dramatic.
Right.
But for people that actually study martial arts, these little tiny tweaks in terms of how we represent it make all the difference. Really make it authentic.
That's also the real martial arts world. Like a martial artist would be able to tell you how you hold your stance, whether your finger is here or here, makes a huge amount of difference. This is the difference between you being able to be pushed over or hold your ground and directed downwards. So
that's what I was doing wrong. Damn.
That's what it is. It's the pinky thing.
Oh man, it's all the pinky. You guys have all sorts of props. I see you've got like a Gwendal in the back and behind you. You're a guy with a lot of weaponry. I like my my swords too. Yeah.
I do actually, and Lee had asked me to do a little talk about weapons in terms of. So I brought a few. This is a modern weapon, right?
Yeah, a Tai Chi
modern wushu tian. And the interesting thing about like the old Shaw Brothers movies and stuff is they were using these kinds of not necessarily modern, but these mass-made weapons, which are very flat and very they're mass-made. They're not really that interesting artistically. They're more like tools. But so here's a genuine antique sword. This is about probably late Qing or early Republic of China. And you can see the details in it are much more interesting. The guards are correct. because this is something that was actually used.
Right.
I don't know if you can catch that, but you can see the 7-star insets, inlays, and details. The handle is oxhorn, which is a very common element, and it's a schwang, a double. Right?
Yeah.
So sadly, when you're talking about swords, when you look at the various visuals out there, they're invariably of samurai swords that I think we're at a point, people don't even know the difference. And part of bringing the sword and authentic Chinese weaponry back is really, differentiating between, the different styles and techniques.
And here's the thing where wuxia gets kind of interesting, because obviously it is a fictional medium, but it is based very heavily on reality, and it feeds back into reality. So a common thing you see in martial arts movies is like the switchblade weapons, where you have blades that jut out all sorts of weird ways. And when you actually think about that, it's not a switchblade is not a very strong weapon, because the blade and the tang, the inner part of the blade, is not connected.
Right. It's really flimsy. It'll break right off, right?
Yeah, you do have.
This is a full tang, though, right?
This is another antique, but I mean, you can see how this is. It's a pretty standard looking sword, right?
I think Gabe, our artist, is getting a lot out of this, because we talked about drawing this up
as a hidden blade.
Ah,
cool. So in case you lose your first blade, you've got a second one, and this is real. So we really want to kind of get back to that reality to it. I mean, in wuxia, you have people with crazy weapons. That's pretty common.
Yeah.
And these crazy weapons did exist, but most of the ways that they're depicted nowadays are sort of fanciful. They aren't really based on anything. Just sort of, okay, we want a blade to jet out from a baby cart or something along those lines. However, they are genuine. There's some crazy combination weapons in Chinese martial arts, and we're hoping to kind of untap that, to kind of unpack all of that.
Cool. I want to bring Lee into the conversation here. I mean, Lee, I understand you guys are going to be doing a subscription-based service, right? But the product roadmap begins with comics, right? I think that, Peter talked about that when we had him on Sinica Show. The focus is going to be on comics, and then later on, you're going to expand into other media, into televisual stuff, into television, hopefully the big screen, games, and other media. So what was the thinking? Why start with comics, Lee?
So we made a very deliberate decision to start with comics, as it's the best and fastest way to get our stories and characters out to the market really quickly, right? And by focusing on comics through the Kickstarter campaign, as you talked about, which is incredibly successful, we got into the hands of a global audience, our stories, our characters, and we know that the world is thirsting for new, imaginative storylines and really, rich and diverse characters. So that was really one core reason. Now, our comics first strategy is based on taking a proven Silicon Valley technique, MVP, and applying it to the entertainment industry. So MVP, which means minimum viable product, is basically a technique to rapidly, really quickly create products, get it out to market, get early customer adoption, and get their feedback. And right off the bat, then we take that and we take the product to the next level. So the fact is that all of this is done really quickly because of comic books, right? Without the upfront risk of spending tens of millions of dollars and waiting a long time, which is what it would be necessary for a TV show or a movie. So through comics, we are already building a very engaged and dynamic fandom now. Now, having said that, in parallel with the comic books, we definitely have clear plans and preliminary activities already underway to leverage, again, our content and stories into films, TV shows, games, and interactive experiences. And I should just add that, as part of our journey in the Immortal family, we have an amazing Immortal advisory board where we really have a who's who of industry leaders in entertainment, media, comics, and gaming. And they're fully supportive of this comics first strategy and incredibly excited to help accelerate our growth into the other platforms.
And why did you guys decide to go with this sort of subscription model? What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, so, I mean, I've built out, a number of very successful subscription services that media companies and retailers, and I'm really, frankly, pretty psyched to do it at Immortal. And the reason is really two prongs, right, at a high level. Subscriptions are a proven way to attract and engage fans at scale, and to really create a strong and loyal community. From the business side, subscriptions are like the best recurring revenue stream, right? So that is unquestionable. And through tiers and gamification, we have a lot of opportunities to also upsell and cross-sell. Okay, so it makes total sense. It's proven, and we're really excited to build out the subscription service.
Takes some of the risk out of the more ambitious projects down the road too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so through our subscription service, which will really be focused, one of our favorite terms that we use is radical fan engagement, right? We really want to create new, services and offerings to our fan base that just frankly don't exist now. And we've got a plan to build it and to activate them. And what we'll be offering through the subscription service is a rich, immersive experience for a global audience, and it'll deliver things like early access to content, members only content, VIP access to engage with us and really get involved behind the scenes in many different ways. Okay, things right now, if you're a fan, you're separated because you can read it or watch it, but you can't influence it or touch it. We're going to have people sort of really part of the Immortal family. We're going to leverage a lot of digital experiences powered by new tech, AI, augmented reality, just amazing, mind-blowing experiences. And of course, there'll be really cool merch.
Yeah, set me up. That is awesome. I think one of the things that really attracts me to this is this idea that there's going to be this whole universe, this interconnected universe. And Emma, maybe you can talk to me about the world that you're building here, the whole milieu that will be, as I say, so interconnected. It comes from China, but are there also Western elements in it? I mean, are they the Western and sort of the East Asian things brought into juxtaposition? Are they in conflict at all, in tension? If not, maybe in the Adept. I mean, I think we've already seen part of that, but also in the titles that are coming down the road with the more sort of cosmological elements in there, the Assassin G or Chronicles of the Immortal Swordsman or Fashang. Can you talk about that?
Sure. The titles are most definitely interconnected, and I think we'll see a real blend of cultures. As you saw with Amy's story and now Phil or Ironpond's story in Chronicles of the Immortal Swordsman, we're opening on the West Coast, so we're very much in the United States for that. But we've already been introduced to Fashang, and we're going to see his solo story, which takes us back as far as Bodhidharma and the true origins of Shaolin. His story begins a little bit further on than Bodhidharma. It begins in Shandong, and so we're going to be touching on the rebellions of the era in China, and as China is beginning to undergo a lot of dramatic transformations. And we haven't yet met our lead assassin from Assassin G, which is our third comic. But her story, it covers a Jianghu that's really international. The characters, when they start out, they're in China, they're in that tumultuous kind of mid-20th century period, but then they're dispersed from the fallout. And so they become the global diaspora of allied clans who she starts to take down. So yeah, I would say, our world is distinct. It's grounded in real locations and cultures, but in many ways it's borderless.
Wow, that sounds so cool. I mean, so it goes all the way from, early centuries of Chinese history all the way through the Republican period. And I guess you say
there is a retelling of the Chinese experience of the past several hundred years as the backdrop of the story. So there's really multiple things happening. The foreground will always be authentic wuxia, the elements that you're familiar with, but the subtext is of really the story of the Chinese people in the past, 100 years, if not thousands of years, that I think most people haven't had the chance to really think about or focus on. So we're excited to share that part of it as well.
It's fantastic.
Our forefathers.
Peter, you are the heir, both the spiritual and the legal heir to your father's truly storied legacy. Xiao Yi was one of the great writers in the genre, along with people like Jin Yong. Is it the plan to really stick exclusively to the characters and the stories that your father created? Is that the foundation only, and you're building on top of that? Are you taking those stories and those characters and transposing them into different times, or how are you using that trove of IP that you have?
It's a mixture. For instance, I created the story for the Adept, and that was an homage to Shaolin. And I think it's right that we started with Shaolin.
Right.
So, but the second title, Chronicles of the Immortal Swordsman, starts from my father's library, but I see my role as in modernizing and adapting, and also adding a nuance and evolution of character that wasn't really emphasized in his day. So in the process of doing that, it's almost like he gave the baton to me. Now I'm taking it, I'm including new elements, and I'm adding new things, and we're working with different artists while adapting his large body of work and characters and giving them a second life in a brand new global sense that he didn't have a chance to do in his lifetime.
Fantastic. You guys, of course, none of this could come to fruition if you didn't have backing and if you didn't have the support of not just investors, but also advisors. And I want to bring one of those people up right now. Jonathan Woetzel is a consultant, a real legend. I don't think there's anyone in the Chinese business community who isn't aware of the work he's done. He's been in China since the 1980s. He's written 5 books on China and is the co-chair of the Urban China Initiative. I actually had the pleasure, just by sheer coincidence, of hearing him last night speak in a clubhouse room. Peter joined briefly in that as well. He was just brilliant. It was just so nice to hear somebody not talking nonsense about China and actually speaking from genuine experience and offering genuine insights. Welcome, Jonathan. Thank you so much are you staying up late or getting up early here?
This is definitely staying up late. It's been a long day. Happy to do it. Guys,
really
good
glad
to talk to you again.
Glad to have you.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to just ask you straight up, why does a businessman invest in a cultural product like this, and specifically in a very distinctly Chinese cultural product? Is it profit driven or mission driven or some combination thereof?
Yeah, I mean, it's both. I think that for me, it's first of all that I am sort of China's kind of a bit part of who I am, and I started off with my whole Chinese career was translating Tang Dynasty poetry, so it actually not a business background really. It's much more about culture, and I think generally speaking, people should invest in things they're interested in because then they'll probably be better at it. And then it is an investment, of course. So the whole point was to see that this would be something that, if you will, is sustainable. So if I invest in something because you want to see it grow, you want to see it flourish. And part of that is making sure it has a sustainable set of economics behind it. And I think culture is a pretty good bet from that regard. I mean, we know kind of this is one of the things that people will spend more money on as they have more money to spend. So it's not a bad place. But really the difference between success and failure, in my experience, is, again, passion, interest, and ultimately execution. So you should invest in things that you're willing to pay attention to. So.
I mean, as much as we wish it might be otherwise, and in spite of all, the Chinese Communist Party always banging on about the importance of exporting soft culture, it hasn't happened to date. There are not a lot of Chinese cultural products that have taken root and been successful internationally, with the sole exception maybe, well, food, of course, and Wuxia. Is that part of what was interesting to you? Did you think that this was a truly viable means of sort of taking Chinese culture out to the world?
Yeah, well, I think it's a really good point. A great observation, Kaiser. That, I mean, I think that there is a big, white space here in the form of, like, China has this amazing culture. Why does nobody know about it? So, I mean, something is missing here. And if you rely on the Confucius Institutes to do the work, well, I'm not sure it's really going to get there. So, clearly, there's and yet Asian culture clearly can be exported. I mean, sure. You can just look at South Korean dramas, for example. But or BT BTS. I mean, so
Right.
that's Asian culture. But yeah, here not. So clearly white space. So yeah, I think it's like, okay, it's just about who's going to do it, who's going to create that ecosystem partnership model for bringing that great culture to a much broader audience and to integrating. I love the phrase that Amazon, the borderless world here.
Right.
You know, that's where culture is that. I mean, it's digital. It goes anywhere, but as long as you can get it there, as long as it can travel. So you need to have the content. You need to put that out there, and I think that's the opportunity here. So. Mm-hmm.
It's pretty clear that Immortal and the team that Peter has around him have a lot to offer, and they bring together just such an incredible range of talents and perspectives. But for you personally, what was it about Immortal, about their vision that really clinched it for you, that really sealed the deal?
Well, I mean, obviously, got to start with Peter. I mean, Peter and I go back prior to Immortal. I mean, and we worked on U.S.-China stuff together, and I think that's a big part of it. Just sort of the credibility of the founder and that person's vision and sort of alignment. I think the other part was clearly, you know, I'm a novice investor in culture. I wouldn't say I'm a deep expert in this stuff. So you're known by the company that you keep. And that's both in terms of the team and sort of seeing the capacity to pull that together, and the advisors, you know, the people around this organization that are saying, yeah, we believe in this mission. I mean, that's really what I think, you know, as a person who don't pretend to be able to tell people what to do and things that I don't know much about, but at least you should know who you're working with. That part, yeah, that's a big part of judgment. And then finally, yeah, a good feel for this. I'll have to say, I did run the Adept by my teenage daughter.
I did too. Yeah.
Yeah. She bought it. She said, okay, you know, it's not cringe. We can do this. So
right.
that's highly positive feedback in my experience.
Yeah. That's exactly the words that my daughter used, that it's not cringy at all. I mean, that was really important, because that's always, I mean, whenever dad puts something in front of you, there's a very high potential that it's going to be cringy, right?
Yeah, for sure. Anything dad related. Yes.
What would you like to see Immortal do with the investment, not only that you put in, but with the money that they've raised and the money that they're raising right now? What do you think they should prioritize by your own lights?
Yeah, again, I'm not the guy who's going to tell the team what to do, because I think they got to do it. But the MVP approach makes sense. I mean, it's like, let's get something out there. Let's test quickly, test to failure, figure out what works, keep doing more of the stuff that is working. Yeah, I mean, I like to see this scale, obviously. I mean, but I also think that I know content is a business you have to invest in. I mean, it's something that takes a while to generate, and that's important to do this in the right way. So I guess that's my hope, is that this is an authentic communication. I mean, that's what I believe will differentiate in the marketplace. There's a lot of schlock out there, and it's just not very good. So we don't need any more of that, frankly. So, but you know, genuine product that's worked on and it has authentic values. I mean, I think you can get a lot of option value out of that. I mean, it pays off in a lot of different ways. And so I hope they just use the money to develop that authentic vision and distinctive content.
So you're still in China right now, and you've been there forever. And presumably you've talked this, you've shopped this to people in China that you've met. What kinds of feedback have you gotten about what Immortal's doing from Chinese interlocutors?
Yeah, it's I mean, I think it's a cautious optimism, basically, to say, like, we like this to work out, and you know, just as soon as we see a few more runs on the board, we're all prepared to show up, or some, you know, it's all risk in terms of people's views and passion again. So people who get the genre, of course, I mean, they love it, you know. And then there is, particularly at this point, people with teenage daughters who are Chinese, they can see the voice here, because it is a fresh voice. I mean, it's universal culture, but it's applied in a new context and a 21st century context, and it is about, you know, this intersection of U.S. and China and global culture. So I think that's really the people who are in that space. They see it. So I think good reception. I have no doubt that this will continue to pick up speed on this side of the ocean. So
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure it will. I mean, it has that impeccable pedigree, the obvious passion and vision behind it. So I think it's a really great horse to bet on, and let's figure out some way for me to get in on the action as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
My
I
pleasure.
look
Yeah.
forward to seeing you again and getting you on our program as well to share some of your wealth of experience. You're a deeply insightful guy. So thank you so much. I want to wrap up here with a 10-minute long conversation with Peter himself. Peter, who of course is the founder of and the CEO of Immortal Studios. Earlier, Peter, we were talking quite a bit about philosophical traditions. That was a lot of our panel discussion just now, and the role they have in Immortal. It's been a theme for you for a while, and something that you feel really ardently about, quite obviously, this idea that classical Chinese values are really encapsulated in Wuxia as a genre, in the storytelling tradition of Wuxia. So let's be really very precise about this. What are those values? How do you feel that your work is going to help Western audiences come to a better appreciation and a better understanding of those values? I mean, because for sure, I mean, even going back to David Carradine in Kung Fu, I think that whatever you might say of that, I mean, this is one of the few shows that my dad encouraged us to watch, and it's precisely because of this. He actually thought this was a good vehicle to, I mean, they portrayed traditional values in a very good light. Back in the 70s when I was a kid.
I would start with a few big ticket items that we try to come across. We have really drilled down on. One major concept is of where humans exist in relation to others, and that there's I think human life is considered incredibly sacred and valuable, and that what we hold between our heads, our consciousness and will, has the ability to be worked upon. So that's reflected in notions of cultivation, of self-improvement, that we have this vast untapped ability. And I think the martial arts is just a superimposed set of things to extrapolate that notion of infinity, that we have the ability to be extraordinary if we only applied to ourselves.
Right.
And then there's the virtues. I think another Chinese virtue is the notion of balance. Balance not as in the limp, flaccid state, but something that's incredibly dynamic, that you work upon, that you seek to bring differences together. And then the various Confucian virtues of integrity, of truthfulness, of respect. I think there's a lot of those things that also come in that's part of the wuxia world. But where I think it really matters this moment is that these are not ancient ideas that are like way behind us. These are ideas and these are metaphysical truths that is being proven by quantum physics and quantum mechanics. They're happening upon the nature of reality. So I want to, because it's easy to think that it's a bunch of old people stuff, people bowing to each other and virtues, but that's really not the classical Chinese world that I know. The one that I know is incredibly present. It's incredibly on edge. It's incredibly knowing, and that these ancients have actually spent a huge amount of time in understanding what is the nature of reality. What is this experience we call life? How do we apply ourselves in it in a way that actualizes our own potential while benefiting others? So it's a really, really timeless and amazing message, and I think that is incredibly current.
So let me put it this way. Are you more interested in demonstrating the commonalities between this set of values and ones that are more familiar to Western audiences? Or are you more interested in highlighting the uniqueness, the difference?
It's both. It's both. And I don't think they're actually in conflict.
In balance, right?
Yeah, they're perfectly in balance. And so it's not like 50-50. It's 100% and 100%. My notion of East-West is not 50 East, 50 West, but it's really full throttle. But I do think there has been a general sense of disrespect for the classical Eastern knowledge by the ivory tower or West, a pure Western mentality. And part of that is really bringing to bear the things that have been disrespected, disowned, and misunderstood, and bringing it to the spotlight. Because I think this kind of knowledge is what the world needs today. for
Sure,
the chapter.
So on the subject of East and West and what you're bringing, there's clearly a very strong sense of mission that propels a lot of the work that you do. And it's something that I really dig about what Immortal is doing. Let's spell it out. What for you is the broader mission here?
The broader mission comes down to something that is personal for everybody who's watching today, everybody who would be touched by our stories. It's awaken your hero. We were able to just look at this whole thing and implicate it down to what does awakening your hero mean? I believe there's a desire to do good. There's a desire to be fully expressed. There's a desire to contribute. There's a desire to honor that which is deeply within you. And I believe that when it comes down to it, is that Wuxia is about unleashing that person inside you that you want to become. So we're really hanging our hat on that, on awakening everybody's heroes, awakening the hero in everybody.
I dig it. I love it. There's obviously, real opportunity though in this. We were just talking with Jonathan about that. But beyond what it's going to do to, I think, maybe build respect and mutual understanding, I think that you've attracted a lot of talent from across the industry. And just now, earlier, you flicked at how the importance of the advisors that you have brought on. Let's hear a little bit about them and about the people from there in Southern California, but really across the entire entertainment industry, people who have cut their teeth at Marvel, for example. Who are the people that you've brought on, the industry leaders that you've brought into this project?
Well, first, there's so many different great advisors we have. I just invite you to visit our website, immortal-studios.com, to get a complete list. So I'll just rattle off a few. In the comic world, we're so incredibly happy to have united the head of publishing from the DC universe with the former editor-in-chief of Marvel, with the founder of Tokyo Pop, who brought manga to the West.
Wow.
Great independent Chinese-American artists who've drawn some of the most well-known superhero characters. Bernard Chang in the entertainment world. A lot of my former colleagues, the former CFO of MGM, one of the co-founders of the Creative Artists Agency, the president of Endgame Entertainment, one of the major independent film financing companies. On the tech side, we have the founder of Rotten Tomatoes. We have founders from Silicon Valley.
I know those guys.
We have Gene Ching, major martial arts aficionados. We've made an outreach to the martial arts community. We've created our own Immortal squad of extraordinary martial artists who are bringing that authenticity to who they are and what they do. And there's so many more. It's still an increasing board, and in fact, as I'm talking about it, is that we should have you on it as well, Kaiser.
I'm honored. But for people who aren't so honored and who maybe aren't, people of enormous means, who don't have that kind of experience, and who want to support the work that you're doing, who want to get involved, who are really excited about the next big thing to come, which is going to be Chronicles of the Immortal Swordsman, that I am just really salivating over. I can't wait to dig into that. What can they do to get involved? Where should they go? I understand you guys are doing a WeFund right now.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that and where we should direct people listening to this?
This is an extension of our radical fan engagement. Radical fan engagement means opening up our arms and really inviting people to step in. And there's several ways. One is, if you're touched by what we're doing and you're excited, you want to be part of it, well, you can be a shareholder today, just like Jonathan. And we already have, I would say, hundreds of shareholders who've come in and invested from anything from $100 to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can do that today through WeFunder. So you could go to wefunder.com and look for Immortal Studios. Our next project, which I'm writing for the first time, I sat in the writer's seat in adapting Chronicles of the Immortal Swordsman, which is my favorite book growing up. There's so many big reasons why this is special. We get our name from Immortal Swordsman. That goes live on Kickstarter. So I would just say go to our website, keep in contact with us, be added to our newsletter, be a shareholder, be a supporter, and continue to learn about us.
And when is that first issue of Immortal Swordsman going to be out?
It goes live March 1st.
March 1st. That is soon. Wow, fantastic! I can't wait to see that.
You saw a little bit of the scenery that Gabe has been working on. It's incredible, and we've substituted the ancient mystical mountains of China for today's urban LA, and it's something very special.
Cool. So www.immortal-studios.com and then wefunder.com/immortal.studios are the places to go. Make sure to check that out. I also, before we go, I want to remind everybody that we're going to be talking to Peter again at 5 p.m. Eastern on Clubhouse. You'll have a chance there to ask him your own questions. I think there are a lot of people who are here who have asked questions that we haven't had a chance to get to because we're out of time. But it would be fantastic if you would join us on Clubhouse and ask your own questions of Peter.
I'll save a little bit, Kaiser, for tomorrow's discussion. I'll talk about the problems. I think the best startups, I'm told, are supposed to solve a problem.
Right.
And we've heard a lot about the solution. We've heard about the insights. Tomorrow, I'd love to tell you a little bit about the problems that we are solving in the world today through this kind of fun and engaging platform. I think we have a chance to make a difference globally. I look forward to talking about that tomorrow.
Peter, what a pleasure to talk to you, and to Jonathan, to Jean, and to Gabe, to Lee, and to Emma. Thank you so much to Jesse for putting this together, my colleague at SupChina. Best of luck to you. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. And then anyone else who's on this call who wants to join in as well, you're absolutely encouraged to bring you up on stage and let you guys talk about the work that you're doing with Immortal as well. So that's at 5 p.m. on Clubhouse. Peter, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Kaiser.
I'm really honored to be asked to take part in this too.
Consider that invitation a real one.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
Right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.